Hello everyone, welcome to another Joseki lesson. In this lesson, let's recap what we learned in the previous 4 lessons. So that's from 502.1 to 502.4. These are some of the most basic Josekis out there, and they're really important. So that's why I'm doing a recap lesson. First, because Josekis are hard. It's hard for beginners and amateurs to learn, and it is very hard to teach as well. So no one can teach Josekis perfectly. I've seen a lot of sources, I've done my research before recording these lessons, and I don't think I've seen a lesson that's perfect for everybody. The ones I watch are usually geared towards mid-level amateurs or higher level amateurs. Those are quite complicated, and those usually do not avoid any complicated patterns. So I have to simplify some of the things for my lessons because my lessons are targeted at beginners and lower level amateur players, and I'll save some of the more complicated variations for future lessons. The second reason for this recap is that repetition is always necessary. So personally, when I watch some videos on Josekis, I always forget them after a couple weeks because first of all, I don't use them. I don't play that many games anymore. I don't really use those Josekis. And even if I do play games, I try to avoid Josekis personally. So that's why repetition is really necessary. So if you're unclear about any Josekis, just watch my videos again or look for some other videos out there. Repetition is always helpful. And number 3, recap can help us focus. So I'll keep this short so we know the most important takeaways from each pattern. And if you're not sure about any of the pattern or want more explanations, more variations, just check out lessons 502.1 to 502.4, the previous 4 lessons before this one. So all 4 lessons focus on this shape after 5 and 6. So let's start with the 2 outdated but very important Josekis. So number 7 here. So as I said, this Joseki is outdated, but it was the Joseki. If you ask players to name one Joseki to teach before the age of AI, I believe at least 80 or 90% of players would choose this one because this is so classic. But now, in the age of AI, we think number 7 here on the second line is a slow move. And if you're white, you can play elsewhere, and you're not afraid of being attacked by black. So that's why number 7, number 9, these are still big, right? Occupying the corner is still big, but they're a little slow and inefficient. So if you're beginners, this is totally fine for both sides, but once you are a mid-level or higher level amateur player, you should try to avoid number 7 if you're black. And of course, if you're a beginner, you can still play this move as white, forcing black to extend here at number 9. So this is playable for both sides. And more complicated variations will involve this move. For number 8, right here, it's a one-space pincer, where this attachment is more aggressive. So we'll cover some of these variations in future lessons. These are simply too complicated for beginners. So if you're black, and if you want to avoid white's pincer here, or the attachment here, just don't play number 7 on the second line here, right? Play this move instead, which is the modern Joseki that we'll get to in a little bit. But number 7 can also be here. This is another outdated move, but I think it's perfectly playable for beginners or lower level amateur players, or even mid-level amateur players. You still see this move when you watch games online. Mid-level, mid-down players would still play this move. It used to be considered a fine move because this move kind of occupies the side, but as it turns out, AI believes it's not, first of all, it's not putting enough pressure on white's corner. White can take sente. White always takes sente. After number 7 here, right, white always plays away, especially at the beginning of a game. And second of all, in the future, right, not right away, white can still come in this way. There's still kind of a connection problem between 5 and 7. So this Joseki would look something like this. And if white can kill number 7 in a ladder like this, then this is pretty good for white. But of course, black can start this ko. I get into the variation a little bit more in one of the previous lessons, and this can get quite complicated. But the thing to know is that Number 7 will leave an invasion here at number 8 for white, so it's not totally secure. Although number 7 can potentially set up this joseki, right, can set up some good moves for black. So this is playable for black, or black can just jump here to protect against this invasion and also kind of projecting its potential toward the center. So these are some of the follow-up moves that black can make, but again, black is investing 2 extra moves here, and white is taking sente and playing elsewhere. If you're white, if you want to protect the corner sometime down the line, not right now. Right now, this will be too small, because playing the approach moves is much bigger. But white can secure its corner by playing at number 8, if you do not want black to come into the corner. So number 7, still playable for beginners and amateur players, but for professional players, number 7 is a little too slow. It's not really giving black any concrete gains. So let's move on to the modern joseki, which is this attachment underneath. White bends here, and black plays this double bend, or double hane. So now, number 1, the mistake to avoid is that for beginners, you might think white can cut here, atari, and capture number 9 with number 12. But this is very bad for white. I explained why in one of my previous videos. This is really, really bad for white. White is already losing after black's number 31 because white is very low. Number 9 is very small. White is probably gaining 3 to 4 points here. And black's potential toward the center is just huge after capturing number 4. So even if it's like this is not okay for white. So white will never want to capture number 9 like this. So what should white do? The easy way, which I introduced in lesson 501, actually, as one of the most basic josekis, is just to connect here. Black has to play this move, and white takes sente. This is it. This is a very simple joseki. Black is alive, white is alive, well, 90% of the time. You don't really have to worry about their survival. Very peaceful, very even, and white can play elsewhere, like this. So if you're white, and if you want to avoid complications after your opponent plays at number 9, if you're not sure, if you want to survive, just play here. It's a great move, very solid move. Black plays here, and then you take sente. So it's a very important joseki for beginners to learn. If you're feeling slightly more advanced, you can try another joseki by playing this atari. Black must connect, and now white has a couple choices, this or this. If white connects here, black can play this move, and this is the joseki that I showed earlier. White is on the outside, black has a base here on the side, and this is playable for both sides. White can take sente now. Or if white wants to focus on building a base here and putting some pressure on black, right? Because this, eventually, black can live very easily by capturing number 8 here on the corner. But by playing this standing down, white is contesting black's base. So black, if you want to be peaceful, you can play this move, very solid. If you're black, if you want to avoid really complicated variations, just play at number 15. It's totally fine. But of course, in joseki books, in all the videos, they talk about this move, and this gets really, really complicated after white plays right here. It's a really sharp move, right? If you're black, you have this cutting point. Connecting here will be, I'd say it's playable. White will play here. Black can jump out like this. White can play something like this. So this is still playable, but having the connect here at number 17 may not make black happy, right? It just feels a little too slow. So that's why there are all kinds of moves that starts with this. I don't even know what exactly they are. I definitely need more research before I teach, but these are going to get really complicated really fast. And that's true for a lot of the joseki variations. It gets really complicated really fast. So as beginners, you need to be really careful. When you're watching another video that gets really complicated, just pause the video and learn the most basic things first. So I'm not going to go on from number 19, but I'll cover it hopefully in a future video. And I'm sure you can find some videos online that talk about this variation if you're really curious. But for now, if you did play number 15 as black and your opponent plays number 16, you can connect here, right? Because white is still not alive here on the upper side. If it plays here, you can jump out. Eventually, if you need to live, you can play this, kind of capture, try to capture number 16. It's still playable for both sides. We'll just play this. So black is still alive, and white is not gaining a whole lot by trying to attack black. So this is okay for black. But if you're black, if you want to avoid all that hassle, just play this move. It's a little slow, but it's much safer. Now let's talk about number 12 here. So when white plays here, black needs to cut here, white needs to extend here. Black plays this double Atari, white saves number 4. Black needs to address the weakness here on the corner, otherwise number 8 can play at b17 and escape and kill black's corner, so that's why black needs number 17 to make sure the corner is alive. And now white plays this move. In the past, we would think that number 5 and number 13 are pretty much wasted on the outside, so this is better for white. But actually, black can just connect here and start what might become a very complicated fight. So once again, there are videos that cover like what this fight is about. But personally, as a teacher, I would just say you should just play out these fights yourselves. But of course, I can make a feature video that talks about how this fight might unfold here on this side. But usually, white chooses number 12 here when white already has something on the upper side, right? If the upper side is black's, then when black connects here, this white group will be under a lot of pressure, right? Just imagining if there are some black stones here or white stones here, that's going to change the calculus of how this fight plays out for both sides. So if you're white, make sure you have some stones already on the right side before you play this variation at number 12 here. But this is another viable joseki. Lastly, I'll just talk about this joseki. Black, usually cutting here is not great because white first can just push down here. Number 5 is pretty much wasted on the outside, and black can of course play something like this. Because white has so many moves here, white doesn't have any cutting point, right? So this is super solid for white, and this is not okay for black because black's corner is very limited, and number 5 is kind of a wasted move on the outside. So that's why even though black has sente here, it's still not okay for black. And if black captures, now there's a cutting point on the outside. White can play, I think white can play this or something like this on the outside. And this is good for white. The only problem is that maybe before this, there's already a black stone here. So you might be worried about white's wall on the outside not having much of an effect, right? So if we have number 7 already here, white may not like this because black has taken the corner, and white doesn't have a whole lot of potential to develop on the upper side because black has already occupied it. In this case, if you don't like this pattern, I think it's perfectly playable for white. But if you're white and if you don't like it, just play this joseki instead, which is fine. Personally, I would still prefer to play this joseki for white, or even this joseki. I think this is great for white. But if you don't like it, right, sometimes you don't like your opponent taking your corner, then you can just connect here and force black to play this joseki, and this is playable for white. So these are all the main variations stemming from 5 and 6. Very basic and very, very important. Make sure you understand all the main variations that I covered in these few lessons. And of course, there are more complicated variations out there. I will cover them in the distant future, which means after I cover all the basic josekis, which might be another at least 20-30 lessons. And then we can look at some of the more complicated variations. So I hope you find this helpful. If you're unclear about any of the patterns, please feel free to check out 502.1 to 502.4. If you have more questions beyond what I covered, please just ask in the comments, and I'm happy to do a separate video addressing some of the variations. Because it is very important to ask, what if, right? What if this happens? What if black makes this move instead of the variation I showed? And there are many, many questions to ask. So ask away, happy to answer any questions, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for your support.